introduce our final speaker of the evening, who came to us from the White House just to talk to us. So let me just very briefly introduce Viren. There he is. Viren Mayani is Saupo's #1 national advisory board member, and he serves on many nonprofits. He's well known in Atlanta, having served in Mayor Shirley Franklin's office and on the board of the Gandhi Foundation USA. And he is also the managing director of Commensurate Consulting, and he is going to actually introduce our final speaker. So, Viren.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I know we've had whole days of downpour of intelligence, data reporting, and whatnot, but I have to do an audience check just to make sure your spirits are high for the keynote address. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I'm honored to have been deputed to introduce to you a titan from Washington, D.C. He has spent a lifetime promoting the U.S. businesses globally, more specifically to Asia Pacific currently. Albeit extremely busy and having just addressed the attendees of the sold-out Asia Pacific Economic Corporation meeting March 28th and 29th in Los Angeles, just one phone call and a few convincing emails from me has got him to confirm his presence here at Saupo today. It speaks volumes of his interest in promoting emerging markets to the business communities in the US. Mind you, he just flew in this morning and will fly a red-eye out tonight. Mr. Patrick Santillo is the Regional Director for East Asia and the Pacific with the U.S. Department of Commerce's U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, the federal government's frontline trade agency. The Commercial Service promotes U.S. exports, opens foreign markets to American products, and protects U.S. commercial interests abroad. The East Asia and Pacific region spans operations in 13 countries and includes more than 70 foreign commercial service officers plus nearly 300 locally hired employees. It is home to 7 of America's top 15 export markets. Mr. Santillo was the Deputy Senior Commercial Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, Japan, managing all responsibilities for one of the largest commercial service operations in the world. He served as the Principal Commercial Officer at the U.S. Consulate General in Toronto, Canada from the 1960 to 2000. Before that, he was a Senior Commercial Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Athens, Greece, where he had regional responsibility for Cyprus, Macedonia, and Albania. Prior to that, his assignment in Greece, he was the Deputy Regional Director of Europe, where he managed oversight of operations in more than 15 countries in Central and Eastern Europe, besides a whole long slew of other such remarkable and important global business career roles. Mr. Santillo is the member of the Senior Foreign Service and has worked for the Department of Commerce for more than 20 years. A native of Buffalo, New York, he earned his master's degree in economics from the State University of New York at Buffalo and his bachelor's degree from the American University in Washington, D.C. Mr. Santillo was a Rotary International High School exchange student to Japan, and he is an Eagle Scout. Now married to Kathleen Troy Santillo and a proud parent to 2 princesses. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving Regional Director, Mr. Patrick Santillo, a very warm Georgia welcome with a loud and thunderous applause.
See all of you, I can't see what's on the page.
Viren,
thank you very, very much for that introduction. And to Kennesaw State University, thank you for this seminar today and for the invitation to be here at the symposium. And I think a word of thanks to our sponsors as well, because without them, we could not have brought all of you together. So back to you. Thank you so much for that. The last session was absolutely fascinating, and it's absolutely humbling to walk up here and have to present after that session, I have to say, in addition to everything we heard throughout the day. So I'm going to just spend a few minutes with you and share some thoughts that I have, but I would like to, again, with a round of applause, express our appreciation for that last session. That was truly a great way to wrap up this symposium, so thank you. One thing that really struck home in the last session, of course, was that they said that the future is uncertain, and the future comes down to governance. And as a U.S. government employee, I can say the future is uncertain, and it comes down to governance. So, I don't know. It ain't easy. But I am still employed by the U.S. government, and just as one point of clarification, because I'm Patrick Santillo and I work for the U.S. Department of Commerce. I've walked by the White House, but I have to admit that I didn't come from the White House today. But I did walk by it en route, so maybe there's some credit there. But, you know, in the few minutes we have today, what I'd like to do is just share with you sort of three universal truths that I've observed in participating in and attending symposia like this. The first universal truth is that we have in fact become powerless without PowerPoint. And I think we've seen PowerPoints today, some of them very good, some of them a little difficult to read from the back of the room. But I am an old-fashioned person, and I have not brought a PowerPoint with me today, but I'm going to do my best to share with you some thoughts as best I can. The part of that universal truth about symposia like this, being powerless without PowerPoints, is that people tend to remember better when they participate in the discussion. And I think all of us will remember this last discussion because of the active participation. So we want to keep that going a little bit. But we're also involved with an educational institution. What do educational institutions do? They teach. But in order to find out whether their teaching is working, they have to ask questions and they have to test. So we're going to do a couple little tests here, but they're not so hard. Number one, how many of you feel like you really learned something today? Raise your hand. Fantastic. Virtually all of us are walking away with that feeling that this was worth our time because we've learned something. Number two, how many of you feel that something that you learned today was really surprising to you? So not only did you learn it, but it shook some fundamental thinking that you had. How many of us really felt surprised? I know I did. Again, very high numbers. Just for me to know and get a sense, how many of you are exporters or importers or would call yourselves right now truly doing business internationally? So I can see. Okay. And how many of you would say you're more on the investment side of things and doing investments? Because we've talked a lot about inbound investment, FDI. We've talked about outbound investment, at least this morning. Investors? A few, not quite as many. Okay, that's helpful for me. Educators and students, I think, again, probably almost everyone in the room, because if today was any example, I think we've all spent a lot of time learning and sharing information. How many of you would say, based on things that you've learned today, you can go away from here and actually feel empowered now to do business in and with Asia, or that it's really what your appetite to move forward doing business in or with Asia? Not as many. So we've got to keep our studies going, and we want to continue this kind of work because it is activities like this that will help us with that appetite and, in fact, continue to grow and to understand Asia. The last question, of course, is how many of you are not sure why you're here after being here all day. Good. That's the right answer. You've all passed the test. That's very, very good. We know why we're here. We're here because Asian economies grew an average of 9.6% last year. We're here because U.S. exports to Asia increased by 27.4% last year. We're here because U.S. exports of goods totaled more than $339 billion last year. We're here because we had more than 410,000 Asian students studying in the U.S. last year. And if I can give you a quote just here in Georgia, the economic impact of the 14,707, now that's a very specific number, so I think it's reliable because it doesn't say 15,000 or a little over 14,000, but 14,707 foreign students here in Georgia. The estimated economic impact from that is some $383,945 million. That's not just tuition, despite what some of us think about tuition. It isn't just tuition, it's the whole economic impact. All of those help us really understand that we know why we're here. Because Asia is the future, and our future in the United States with Asia is in fact our future. So I hope, and I think by the virtue of you all staying with us so long, agree and understand that that's why we're here. Because we have an abiding interest in Asia, and we know that the future of the United States is clearly tied to the future of Asia as well. Getting to the second universal truth about symposia like this, we know that people want the speakers to present important and dramatic information. Okay, we know that. That's why people come to conferences. They want important and dramatic information. But when you are the last speaker on a Friday, now a Friday night, and you've heard from true experts in the field, people who have made a living on this, people who have studied it, people who do it day in and day out, it is very difficult to really then turn around and share dynamic, dramatic, important information with an audience like this. So I am not even going to attempt at this late point to try to do that, but I'll share just a couple of things about the U.S. government as it's currently working. It is currently working and currently employed. And just say, what are we doing? You know, it comes down to governance, okay? Well, I'm excited right now, and I'm about as excited as I've been in those 25 years of employment with the U.S. government. Why? Well, because right now, we are talking about exports. We are talking about Asia. I've been doing that my whole career. It's what I like to do. I started out walking around trade shows and telling people, you should export to Asia. It's fun, it's exciting, okay? But I was like Santillo, party of one, all right? And I mean, it was fun, I liked it. It's what I do. But now, you have President Obama saying, exporting is fun. I want all of you to export. Exporting is important. It is a national priority. These things are very exciting to a guy who's made his living doing export promotion. So we are excited in our community because we believe that there is significant attention being given to the importance of exporting, and within that realm, of course, the importance of Asia. We have something called the National Export Initiative. Now, the test is finished, but just by show of hands, how many of you have heard about the National Export Initiative? Okay, some but not all. So now, one thing, again, in terms of if those of you who felt maybe you didn't learn something, one last chance. The National Export Initiative is the U.S. government's effort to bring a whole-of-government approach to promoting and expanding U.S. exports. We believe this is extremely important for the future of the United States. Exports account for some 11% of our nation's GDP. It is important, but that figure is still low by global standards. We need to increase that and get more companies exporting. Exports last year generated an estimated 8.5 million jobs. Jobs related to exports pay on average 15% more than jobs not related to export. Now this one is staggering to me, but let me share it. Think about this. We want to increase exports, okay? However, less than 1% of America's 30 million companies currently export. Less than 1%. Of those that do export, of that 1% that do export, 58% of them are only exported to one or possibly two markets. Most likely, Mexico and Canada. So the idea is, we take the National Export Initiative and we say, if we want to compete globally, if we want to win the future or compete in the future, if we want to be part of this global world, we have to expand U.S. exports. And we are going to work to do that, and that is the important part of the National Export Initiative. It's the principles upon which the National Export Initiative is based. We've got focus on markets. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation in deference to time, but we believe that that collectively is the idea of bringing more attention to exporting and getting more people involved in the exporting community and in competing globally and specifically competing in Asia. I said there were 3 universal truths. We've come actually to the 3rd universal truth. And that's, again, when you are the last speaker on a Friday afternoon, you have to let people attend the reception. You have to let them go home. Otherwise, they're going to become very, very upset. Before I do that, though, allow me one indulgence. And that is to say that one of the sessions I participated in today was a session on educating the next generation of Americans on Asia. This was a fantastic session. I don't know if all of you were able to be in there because there were so many great sessions. But this is exciting. And this is the opportunity that we have, we as educators, because most of us in the room raised our hands about being educators. This is our opportunity to educate, motivate, and persuade people about the importance of Asia and the opportunities that exist for U.S. companies interested in doing business in Asia. There are people in this room, there are people in this city, in your state, and at the federal level who are committed and dedicated to trying to help you and the people that you work with be more competitive and specifically compete and be successful in Asia. And we look forward to working with you to do that. We know, as I say, that educating the next generation of Americans on Asia is important. Conferences like SOPO help us do that, and for that we are grateful. And we appreciate that effort, and I especially appreciate your patience and determination in staying through the conference. Thank you very much. I know time is up, and so but I am happy to take questions privately or publicly as time.
How about over drinks?
Over drinks on
Because if you have a drink card, like I do, we can all go and have drinks. You must delay your cocktail.
That's a really bad idea. The questions are going to be really hard.
I'm sorry. You have time for 1 or 2 questions.
Easy ones, please, so we can go drink. I mean, so we can. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, hi. I'm a pool manager with Entity here in the U.S. I'm like you, I'm a party of one. I'm the only person for Entity in the Southeast, so I understand what you're talking about. I'm wondering, how do you think Japan is going to be impacted by the disasters?
Thank you for the Japan question. The truth is, my remarks were going to start in talking about Japan, and I didn't do that. I think I indeed should have, because I think in a room like this, with all of us here, there are many of us who have a special affiliation with Japan. I was there as a kid. Again, a little bit of a different story, but I think all of us who are involved in Asia in one way or another, competitors with Japan, friends of Japan, former enemies of Japan, but we all have this sort of feeling about Japan. And we all have this compassion right now for Japan. The predictions are that as drastic as it was and as devastating as it was for the communities, there will likely be a short-term impact in the next quarter or two on Japan's GDP, but longer-term projections right now, as we understand the situation right now, is that there won't be, per se, longer-term impact. I think most of us, again, that have this affiliation with Japan, would say the Japanese are resilient people. Japan is a resilient country as a whole. It is part of the global community, and I think Japan's friends around the world are certain that they want to support Japan and continue to revive and to come through this, and we'll do what we can to make that happen, not just the U.S., but the international community. So I think there'll be some short-term pain there. Our hearts and prayers and thoughts go out to the people in the devastated region, but I think longer term we can be pretty confident that Japan will continue on. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
I'd like to announce the conclusion of our conference. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who have come and spent the day with us thinking, learning, discovering, and meeting new people. You can meet each other for an extended period of time out at the bar, where we will be hosting cocktails.
It's up on the second floor. It's called the A-Way. So if you go up to the top spice where you were for lunch, just hang a left from there, and we look forward to having you all at a cocktail hour with us to network. Thank you again.